Cantonese Cat here, using my new mic, trying to use my deep voice to mesmerize you. But I'm going to talk about something a little bit more exciting, which is the TQQQ, which is a triple leverage QQQ or triple leverage NASDAQ 100. I never really talk about this, or at least I don't talk about it very often. I have a position in TQQQ. And this position, I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about what I expect to happen, whether or not I still hold it, and also when is it that I'm going to end up selling out of this. What happened was around June of 2022 when this banker called Jamie Dimon says that we're in a economic hurricane after NASDAQ had already dropped down closer to 25% or so. I never really respected Jamie Dimon that much. I'm not gonna talk trash here, but I tend to use him as a little bit of a contrarian signal. And this is back then before I was really able to chart the way I do now. Like I think really over the last 2 years I've learned a lot about charting, I've learned a lot about signaling, and I was able to see and recognize a lot more patterns. Back then I didn't really have the tools that I had, and I was going on some more simple things, and I was also going on some more contrarian type strategies, if you will. So I ended up averaging over here around the high 20s, right? Next thing you know, went up to the 30s. I kept averaging up until like around 35 or so. I stopped buying, and next thing you know, sure enough, it went back down, right? And as it goes back down, I continue to average down over here. Can you imagine if I was buying over here, my average is like around 30, which it was, and next thing you know, the price went down to like 16, right? Can you imagine that price dropped like 40% on me? How bad that must have felt, right? Well, by that time when it went down to like 16, my cost average wasn't in the 30 anymore because I kept averaging down, and I was able to average down to maybe around like the low 20s or so. And as price went back up above my average cost, I kept adding because there was a very, very nice kind of double bottom over here. And there was also a lot of, very, very nice things I was seeing, including this bearish trend line over here that looks like it ended up getting broken and ended up getting back tested, right? So I kept adding up until around mid 30s. Again, I stopped adding. I just let it run. And obviously, if you guys have been in the market over the last year or so, remember how brutal it was from July, August, and September, and October of last year. That was a pretty brutal drop, right? And I just ended up holding, and I ended up buying a little bit more over here. And that's probably the last time I was buying the TQQQ. So my average turns out to be around mid 30s or so. And since then, I just kind of let it ride because honestly, if you look at the whales, you look at the trend, whenever you start a bull trend for like the QQQ, it keeps on going for quite some time, right? I mean, like I don't want to bet against the trend here. It just keeps on going quite some time. And wherever you go down on the QQQ on the Nasdaq by like 36% or so, I think it's probably not going to be sustainable, and the narratives are going to be really bearish. And I think this is an excellent time to be contrarian. And I was glad that I was being contrarian at the time. One thing to think about though, like if you would have bought over here on the regular QQQ around 300 and price dropped down to like 250, then you probably would have lost maybe like 16-17% of your money, as opposed to TQQQ if you bought over here around 30 and next thing your price went down to 16, you really lost about 40% of your money. So it's not for the faint of heart. The triple leverage does go either way, and there's going to be significant decay because the regular QQQ has already made its all-time high right around December 2023, right? Around December 23. It's like right smack in the middle for the TQQQ. Like it's not even making its all-time high yet, but QQQ has already made great strides since then, right? Regardless, if you were to bought over here, you were to outperform the QQQ just because of the triple leverage nature of it. But it is risky, especially during a crazy bear market like we just had around 2022. That's something to think about. Why do I talk about it now? Well, because usually I talk about Bitcoin, talk about Ethereum, talk about Bitcoin miners, talk about these more esoteric stocks, more retail-based stocks like Shopify, talk about Tesla, talk about all the other stock. But I actually have a lot of exposure to the large caps. I have a bunch of, retirement fund that I don't generally touch, and they have a ton of, big large cap exposure, and I just find it to be a little bit more boring, so I don't really talk much about it. But I do want to talk a little bit about the TQQQ position that I have, because of the fact that I think it's going to end up keep going higher. If you just look at a weekly chart, you can see that the Bollinger Band has squeezed recently. And because of the squeeze and because of the expansion, this usually comes with a pretty strong bull trend over the next few months. I think it's entirely possible for the rest of 2024 it's going to be a pretty decent bull market for not just the TQQQ, but also for the regular QQQ for NASDAQ, and also for just regular S&P 500 in general. And whenever it gets to this juncture, I made another video. I also think that money's probably going to end up going rotating into small caps as well. I think there's a chance that small caps can outperform. I think that even though things don't look good right now, on the weekly chart, on the monthly chart, it still looks great, right? In terms of Bollinger Band, in terms of Ichimoku Cloud. But that's another story for another day. I want to focus on the QQQ. I want to tell you why I'm bullish on it. And I just show you as to why I'm bullish on it, because even on the monthly chart, like, it's not overextended here on the monthly. It's not even really outside of a Bollinger Band, right? On the last cycle it was, and next thing you know, you end up getting punished for it. So far, we haven't really even closed one single candle above the upper Bollinger Band on the QQQ, which tells me most likely this is going to be a lot more sustainable. On the weekly chart, again, I already showed you there's a big giant squeeze that's happening. It's probably going to push the price up a lot higher over the next few months. Whales have been in and they haven't left, both on the weekly and the monthly. This is a very, very strong momentum trend that's probably going to end up pushing up a lot higher. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the individual holdings of these NASDAQ. You're going to mostly be populated by the Magnificent Seven. The first one by market cap is going to be Microsoft. Microsoft has a very, very, very good look to it. As a matter of fact, it is basically representative in terms of what QQQ is doing. It has a very, very strong Bollinger Band squeeze over here, and price is currently on top of the bull market support band, on top of the 20-week moving average. So it looks like whenever this thing ends up expanding, which is starting to, and whalish momentum is starting to come in, and you have a very, very impulsive move up here, most likely it's going to end up keep going up for months and months and months and months, just like it did last time, right? Again, whales haven't left right now. Whales is around like 82%, which is a very, very strong trend. You look at the Ichimoku Cloud, it looks like it just wants to ride the tank and the blue line up, which is exactly what it's doing, right? That's Microsoft on the weekly chart. On the monthly chart, it did look a little bit overextended. Initially, I was a little bit concerned over here. It did have a big, giant red candle over here that ended up getting closer to this Tenkan line. And whenever things get a little bit too far from the Tenkan, you get punished for it. You have to basically drag it back down, even for price staying sideways through time, waiting for the Tenkan to catch up, or you just end up having price drop. Here, Microsoft did a little bit of both. Was able to find where it needed to find to get closer to Tenkan, and now it bounced up. Most likely, Tenkan is going to end up dragging up along with it, just like the last bull market over here. You see that it's basically just dragging the monthly Tenkan up along with it. Whenever it gets a little bit too far, it gets back down. Whenever it gets a little bit too far, either stays sideways or gets back down. Here it stays sideways, right? So I think that's exactly kind of what Microsoft is doing right now. It's going to keep going up, and eventually after it goes pretty high for a while, end up cooling down, and it's probably going to keep going up. So far, there's no reason to think that this bull trend is over, especially if you look at the whale momentum. Right? That's Microsoft. Apple is also turning very bullish. This is the monthly chart of Apple. You can see that it is bouncing from close to the Kijun, the red line down here, and it found its way back up above the Tenkan, and now is on its way up. Whales are coming very, very strong. I do think that Apple was probably more or less kind of back testing this previous all-time high over here once and twice, found support, and is bouncing up a lot higher. And it looks like it's probably going to end up continuing this bull trend. You look at the Bollinger Band, right now you're starting to get a little bit of expansion here on the monthly. On the weekly, it's been squeezing, and now you're having a very, very nice expansion of the weekly Bollinger Band, right? Upper Bollinger Band pointing up, lower Bollinger Band pointing down. 20-week moving average very much pointing up. A little bit outside of upper Bollinger Band, but that's okay. Whales are in very, very heavily. There's a lot of whalish momentum. you might end up having a little bit of a correction sideways because of how far it is about the upper Bollinger Band. If you end up buying here up top way outside upper Bollinger Band at 220, that's probably not a smart decision. But that probably would have been okay if you think about in the context of 3 or 4 months later. It's just that you're going to end up getting punched now because it's just way too far extended and need to wait for Bollinger Band to expand, which looks like it will. And over time, it's going to end up climbing a lot higher. That's what Apple looks like to me. The other stock here, I always talk about NVIDIA. NVIDIA, looking at the weekly, you had a little bit of a squeeze, and now it just couldn't wait but to continue to expand it upwards. Wells are in very heavily. There's really no sign that this thing is slowing down. I'm also going to show you too on the monthly as to what I mean by there's no sign of it slowing down. It just keeps having these crazy candles about the upper Bollinger Band and dragging up the Bollinger Band along with it. It's also dragging the lower Bollinger Band along with it too. It drags it down so much that it keeps on getting dragged down. Usually, I'm going to show you here on a greater time scheme here. Usually after a while, we have a bull trend, you're going to end up having this big giant Bollinger Band expansion, especially low Bollinger Band, going all the way down to the negatives, right? And whenever you start getting a little bit of a trend exhaustion, usually that's when it hangs around down here, and when the trend's really starting to get exhausted, that's when the low Bollinger Band gets dragged up back to Earth, right? I'm going to show you a little bit more in detail in this cycle over here. Like, you basically didn't really have to worry about the trend getting exhausted right around here, even though a lot of people were probably very, very scared when price got up to here, like, oh, that's the top. Well, the lower Bollinger Band is still not visible yet. So the trend is not done. Like, it really starts to get exhausted when the lower Bollinger Band comes back on Earth. And it did come back on Earth, and it has finally become like more visible over here. And when it becomes more visible, when it gets a little bit closer to here than it was before, like around here, that's when I would get a little bit more cautious. If I have any kind of leverage positions like TQQQs, or like the bullish leverage SOX L, it's another triple leverage semiconductor ETF. If I have something like that, if I see a Bollinger Band kind of pulling up like that, I'll probably get out of it. I probably won't get out of the market. I'll probably end up changing it to just regular 1x instead of like 2 or 3x, and that way, if there ends up anything in kind of volatility, I won't miss this move up here from like $4 to like $7. And if something like that brew, like went from $7 all the way down to like $3, I would have been able to endure it, right? Because I'm not using any triple leverage at that point. At this particular cycle, again, you look for a Bollinger Band to kind of come back from Earth, from like underneath back to Earth, right? Over here, same thing, this cycle, it didn't really end up dragging the Bollinger Band all the way down. It's just bringing it down here a little bit to getting closer to less than 1. But whenever you start to have this sideways over here, it really was showing a lot of trend exhaustion. And the Bollinger Band ended up getting pulled up over here, right? Once you see a Bollinger Band coming back a little bit closer, I would probably have gotten a lot more cautious right around here at this particular candle. Obviously, it went a lot higher than that, but I think if you would have got cautious over here, then you would have been able to avoid this big giant down move over here in 2022, right? Right now, you have a full Bollinger Band expansion upwards and downwards. The thing about the downwards thing is it keeps on getting expanded down, like it's not even stopping. It's not even forming like a little bit of a rounded bottom. It just keeps on getting down. I mean, the wellish momentum just keeps on going up. This thing's probably going to keep going up for a while. I don't know how long it will go up, based judging by looking at this previous cycle, whenever the Bollinger Band went all the way down, when the Bollinger Band went all the way down to the ground, you're really talking about maybe it keeps on going for about a whole year or so, maybe about a year and a half or so, before you're really able to call a top. The thing about it is that fundamentally, NVIDIA is also very, very well. Like it's not, the EPS, the top line, bottom line, like everything is actually looking very, very good when it comes to NVIDIA. So there's not really any reason to think that it's going to stop anytime soon. These things are cyclical. Eventually, there is going to be a much decline in chip demand, but I don't know when that time is going to be. And if the Bollinger Band continues to expand like that, I can not really close my TQQQ position. So I don't know what to say. I think whenever NVIDIA goes up again, and because during the cycle, I think NVIDIA is going to end up being the biggest market cap. Right now, it's the third biggest market cap right now, behind Apple and behind Microsoft. But I think that during the cycle, it's probably going to surpass those two. It become the largest market cap there is for the S&P 500 and for the Nasdaq 100, right? So I'm gonna watch Nvidia. If there's any warning sign for Nvidia, if my friend Danny is seeing a sell candle on the monthly, or if I'm seeing a little bit of a exhaustion here from the Bollinger Band expansion started getting a little bit more contracted, then I would probably end up deleveraging. I would probably end up de-risking myself. But so far, not yet. All right, I spent a long time talking about Nvidia, but this is the market leading stock, even though it's not the largest by market cap, it's the largest by sentiment, and it's the largest by growth in terms of the incredible earnings that it's been able to do, right? You look at Ichimoku Cloud, it basically got really close to the Tenkan, right? And it was ready to bounce. Right now, it's way too far ahead, but it can probably keep going up and track Tenkan up along with it. It already had its necessary correction around April, right? So this thing's probably going to end up going higher. If I look at a weekly, Bollinger Band again, had a little bit of a squeeze. It couldn't even squeeze that hard. It just wanted to keep going higher. It's incredible. Next stock I want to talk about is Amazon. Amazon on the weekly also looks like it's about to blow. It looks like the Bollinger Band is squeezing very, very hard. Looks like it wants to make a big move coming up. I think a big move is probably going to end up going up. Reason why is because it is above the 20-week moving average, and the 20-week moving average is pointing up, so it's probably going to serve as very good support. Tested it twice, found support. Where else is going to go? The probability is probably going to end up going a lot higher. Look at how nice this is squeezing. Like a bigger move is going to come. Like it's probably going to end up being like bam, 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 right? And just going to keep on going higher for the remainder of the year. That's my suspicion. Whales never really left. It turned from like this dark red over here to like a little bit more pinkish color, basically saying that whales are not as strong as it was over here, but they're still there. Like right now, it's still like 85% whales when it comes to Amazon. If you look at the monthly chart is like it's basically showing you a very similar thing. It's probably just basically running up along the upper Bollinger Band. I think the upper Bollinger Band is going to continue to expand, and it's probably going to serve as a magnet to drag price up higher over time. So that's what I'm saying. On a weekly, I was going to say bam, bam, bam. Right on a monthly, you might end up having like a month or two, really, really good looking candle to get back closer to the upper Bollinger Band. On the Ichimoku Cloud, I think this is what's really holding Amazon back. It's just that the Tenkan is just way far away from price, and usually when something like that happens, you have to correct either through time or through price, right? So right now it's been correcting through time. The hope is whenever we stop counting these candles over here for the blue line and start counting these candles up here only, it's going to drag the blue line up higher, and you don't need to correct that much through time. And also based on a weekly Bollinger Band, I really think that the next move is probably going to end up being going up. That's Amazon. Meta. I made a post about Meta just now. I find this to be a very incredible setup because you have a squeeze over here with expansion. You have a squeeze over here followed by probably expansion. Right now is above the 20-week moving average. Whales are still there. You got about close to like 90% whales over here. It's probably going to end up pushing a lot higher, and when it does, it's probably going to be pretty impulsive because of how hard it is squeezing right now. On the monthly, you can see that whales just kept on, being there. They never really left. Whales like in the 98th percentile or something like that. It's not even really hitting like the upper Bollinger Band over here. So I think there's still a lot more room for Meta to continue to go up, which is kind of crazy because price was just like around like $90 to $100 just about a year and a half ago. But I think that this is actually technically still going to end up keep going on higher. There's really no reason to think that it's been overextended. On the Ichimoku Cloud, it's not that far away from the Tenkan. It corrected back in the month of April. Even though the earnings was good, even all the numbers was good, why did it correct? Because of technicals. You can't get too far away from the blue line. You get too far away from the blue line, you get punished by it either through time over here or through price over here. This is the way it is. I'm not making it up, but sometimes it really doesn't matter if they beat earnings or whatever. Like it just goes down. Everybody tries to justify with certain narratives. I don't really care about any of that. But continue to have whales. So I think this is going to be a pretty strong uptrend moving forward. The couple other ones here, Google. Google is one that I am a little bit more concerned because how far extended it is away from the Tenkan over here. If I was to buy one of the Magnificent 7 stocks, I probably wouldn't buy Google just because of that, because I think it's probably going to be getting punished through time or getting punished through the next earning dropping down, even if they have good earnings. That's kind of how these things work. They need a catalyst to do what they need to do to support their technicals. Some people would think otherwise, but I don't care. Could I be wrong? Could Google end up keep going a lot higher, just keep going higher? Sure. Over here, right, it got way too far away from the Tenkan and it just keep on going higher for a year. So I could be very well wrong. It could just keep going up and keep dragging the Tenkan up along with it. And the wells also are very, very much there, right? I'm not going to buy Google individually, but I have exposure to Google through my QQQ and TQQQ position, and I'm okay with that. Because you just never know. If you look at the Bollinger Band, again, very nice, falling up the upper Bollinger Band, not really getting too far away from the upper Bollinger Band. So on the Bollinger Band perspective, it's actually doing okay. I just don't like how it's a little bit too far away from the Tenkan, but that's a little bit arbitrary. On the weekly, you already had the squeeze, and the squeeze has already turned into expansion, and the expansion is already happening with price going up a lot higher over the last few months. So the 20-week moving average is still pointing up. Wells have been really just increasing over the last year and a half. There's not really any reason to suspect that you're going to have any significant downtrend because the wells are in and the trend is up. So then the Bollinger Band is expanding over here on the weekly. So I think it's probably going to end up keep going up. But it might need to correct a little bit through time because of my concerns about the monthly Ichimoku with it being just way too far away from the Tenkan. But we'll see. Either way, it's a bullish trend. The last of the Magnificent 7, which hasn't really been that magnificent recently, is Tesla. Tesla's Bollinger Band is down pointing. The 20-minute moving average is down pointing. It is not really following up with the other ones, but I have reasons to believe that this is de-bottomed this cycle around $100, and this is a very important regional cycle bottom over here around 140, 150. I have a lot of reasons to believe that. And if you also look at the weekly chart here, I want to pull up the Bollinger Band here. If you look at a weekly chart here, it really looks like it's just trying to reclaim the 20-week moving average and the bull market support band over the last 2 months. That's what it's trying to do, is trying to make this thing flat. And it's probably want to get back above of it, and probably going to end up running up higher together with the rest of QQQ, the rest of NASDAQ, and the rest of Magnificent 7. I think that's probably what it's getting ready to do, and look at how nicely it's being squeezed, right? It doesn't have to do what I think it's going to do, but I think it's trying. Regardless, I do have exposure to Tesla, but I have a lot more exposure, way more exposure to QQQ and to TQQQ. I am not an all-in Tesla investor. I'm just trying to increase my exposure to Tesla because I think that is a laggard, and I think that we've bottomed. And I think that I'm going to both chase momentum with the other large cap stocks that I was talking about, as well as trying to catch some of the falling knives like Tesla to trying to diversify my risks. And there are some pretty obvious falling knives that I would not chase, but I think Tesla, both in terms of the fundamentals and in terms of the technicals, I think we're there. And I think anything that I buy now, I'm probably going to end up being very happy with about 3 to 5 years later. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to my rant, and thank you so much for basically reasoning it through with me in terms of my strategy. Please let me know if you disagree. Thank you very much. Have a good one. Bye.